I want to tell you about a night of two people sitting together in their home after a long stretch of hard days. My wife was nearby. The Bible she had bought me months earlier was sitting where it had been sitting since the day she placed it there. And something in me finally moved. Not because I had figured out the right moment, not because the resistance had gone away, not because I woke up that morning feeling spiritually ready or emotionally prepared or any of the other things I had been telling myself I needed to feel before I could begin. I moved because I was tired of not moving, because I had walked past that Bible enough times to understand that every time I passed it, I was making a choice. And the choice I had been making was costing me something I could no longer afford to keep losing. So, I picked it up. This episode is about what happened when I did. Welcome to a first-person journey. My name is G. Let's get back to the story. My wife was in the room when it happened. I did not open it alone first and then bring it to her later. I did not ease into it privately and decide to share once I had processed it on my own terms. She was there, present, watching, and that made it harder, which surprised me. I had imagined, in the times I thought about it during those months of not doing it, that the first time would feel more natural if no one was watching, that I could have a private moment with it first before making it something shared. But the truth was that I had been having private moments by myself with my own thoughts for years, and look where that had gotten us. The whole point of what my wife had asked for was not privacy, it was presence, shared presence. Two people doing something together that acknowledged they needed help beyond what either of them could provide alone. So, she was there, and I picked it up in front of her, and my hands were not entirely steady when I did. I opened to the first page, not to a passage someone recommended, not to a verse I had heard before and felt comfortable with, not to somewhere in the middle where I could feel like I was already inside the story rather than starting it. From the beginning. Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I know those words. Most people do in some form. I had heard them before, read them before, years ago. They were not new to me in the way that unfamiliar words are new, but they landed differently that night. Maybe because of what surrounded the reading of them, the months of not reading, the weight of everything the last year had carried. The woman sitting near me who had bought this particular Bible with her own hands because she believed I needed it. All of that was in the room with those first words. In the beginning. I sat with that phrase longer than I expected to, because there was something in it that felt less like a historical account of creation and more like a personal invitation. A reminder that beginning is always possible, that something can be formless and empty and dark, and then something entirely new can be spoken into it. I was not reading theology that night. I was reading my own situation into the oldest words in the book. And something about that felt less like presumption and more like permission. I need to describe what it felt like from the inside, because I think the feeling of it is as important as the act of it. There were 4 things hitting me at the same time, and I am going to name all 4 because I think each one is real and each one is worth saying out loud. The first was resistance. Even in the act of doing it, the resistance was still there. The part of me that had been avoiding this for months did not simply disappear because I picked up the book. It was present alongside the reading. A low pull. A voice that said, "You do not need this. You are fine. This is not really you." I had to read through that voice rather than waiting for it to stop. Because I have learned, slowly, that it does not stop first. You have to move while it is still talking. The second was emotion I did not expect. I cannot fully explain where it came from or why those particular words on that particular night unlocked something. But something came up in me while I read that had nothing to do with the words themselves, and everything to do with how long I had been keeping this at a distance. The grief of all those months. The grief of the years before them. Something that had been sitting in my chest waiting for a crack in the wall finally found one. The third was a feeling of being seen, not by my wife, though she was there, by something in the words themselves, by the specific quality of Scripture that speaks to the human condition with a precision that does not require the reader to have anything figured out. It does not ask you to be well before you come. It meets you where you are. I had forgotten that. Or maybe I had never fully trusted it. That night I felt the truth of it in a way I had not experienced in a very long time. And the fourth, the one I had not anticipated at all, was the quiet. A stillness that arrived somewhere inside me while I read. Not silence in the room, something inside of me. Like a frequency that had been running at a particular pitch for as long as I could remember suddenly dropped a few registers. Like something that had been loud in me for years went still for a moment. I did not know how much noise I had been living with until it paused. I need to tell you something about my wife in that moment that I think is one of the most important parts of this story. She did not say, "I told you so." She did not say, "Finally." She did not say, "This is what I have been asking for." She did not point to the months of the Bible sitting untouched or remind me of how many times she had waited for me to initiate this. She did not make the moment about any of that. She was just present, quietly present, in the way that a person is present when they have been hoping for something for a long time and it is finally happening and they do not want to do anything that might interrupt it. I felt that from her. The careful, held quality of someone who is witnessing something they had not been sure they would get to witness, who is choosing not to speak because speaking might break the thing that is forming. That restraint from her was its own kind of grace. She had earned the right to say every one of those things she did not say. She chose not to say them. And that choice created space for something real to happen between us that night, instead of a conversation about all the nights before it. I am still grateful for that. I will be for a long time. Starting from the beginning of the Bible means starting before everything else, before the law, before the wisdom literature, before the Gospels and the letters, and all the parts of Scripture that more directly address how a person is supposed to live. Before all of that, there is just the act of creation. God making something out of nothing. God speaking into darkness and disorder and bringing forth light, form, and life. I read that and I thought about my own life, about how much of what I had been living in felt formless and dark, about how long I had been trying to bring order to that darkness through my own effort, through achieving, through managing, through the various constructions I had built to make things look more put together than they were. None of it had worked, because I had been trying to create something out of my own resources in a situation that had gone beyond what my own resources could address. The beginning of the Bible is not a story about human effort. It is a story about what becomes possible when something larger than human effort enters the picture. I needed to hear that. In that season, in that room, with my wife sitting nearby and the months of avoidance behind me. I needed to be reminded that beginning again does not require me to have the power to make something out of nothing. It just requires me to show up to the place where that power lives and stop pretending I do not need it. I need to be honest with you about what one night of reading the Bible did and did not do. It did not fix anything in an instant like many people think it would. The marriage was still in the same fragile place it had been the day before. The wounds my wife carries were still present. The work I had in front of me was still vast and largely untouched. One opened Bible does not change the account of years. What it did was smaller than that, and more real than that. It created a moment of genuine shared experience between my wife and me that had nothing to do with the damage or the repair or the ongoing negotiation of whether we were going to make it. It was just two people sitting together in the presence of something larger than either of them. For a little while, the weight of everything we were carrying did not get lighter, but we were carrying it together in a way that felt different from how we had been carrying it separately. It also broke something in me. The months of resistance had created a kind of seal around this particular act. A story about why it was not the right time, or why I was not the right kind of person for it, or why it could wait. Opening the Bible broke that seal. And once you open the Bible, it is harder to close than it was before you opened it. The next time was easier. Not easy, easier. And the time after that, a little easier still. That is how most real things begin. with one small act that makes the next small act slightly more possible. I know there are people listening to this who have a Bible somewhere in their home, on a shelf, in a drawer, collecting dust, when it was given to them by someone who believed it might help, sitting where it was placed, untouched, for longer than they want to admit. I am not going to tell you what it will feel like when you open it. It felt different for me than I expected, and it will probably feel different for you than you expect too. What I will tell you is what I wish someone had told me during those months of walking past mine. The resistance you feel is not a sign that you are not ready. It is a sign that something in you knows this matters. Things that do not matter do not produce resistance. The size of the resistance is often a measure of the size of what is on the other side of it. You do not have to feel prepared. You do not have to have your questions answered, or your doubts resolved, or your past cleaned up before you are allowed to open it. The whole of Scripture was written for people who were none of those things. It was written for people exactly where you are. And if there is someone in your life who gave it to you, who went out and found it and put it in your hands because they believed it could reach something in you, do not make them watch it sit on the shelf one more day. Open it. With them if you can. Tonight, if possible. Not because it will solve everything, but because it is the beginning of the only kind of help that actually reaches the places nothing else can reach. My wife bought me a Bible and placed beautiful tabs in it because she believed I needed it. And she was right. It took me months to find out she was right. Months of walking past what she had placed in my path. Months of choosing the familiar weight of my own resistance over the unfamiliar territory of what she was asking me to enter. The night I finally picked it up and opened to the first page, I read about a world that was formless and empty and dark, and about what happened when light was spoken into it. I am not going to pretend I have arrived at the light. I am still in the early stages of this, still learning what it means to show up to something larger than my own effort and stay there even when God asks more of me than is comfortable. But I am in my Bible now. We are in it together, and in the beginning is exactly the right place to start.